Hey, I'm Matt Hines with DevOps TV here at DevOps.com at the DevOps Enterprise Summit 2016. It's a lot of DevOps, but it's here what we're here to talk about. I'm joined by Tyler from Quicken Loans, and just talking again about we've had some great conversations about DevOps transformation. So it's a broad area of discussion, but maybe you can just tell us a little bit about some of the context of where Quicken Loans comes from in terms of its DevOps,
Sure.
Outlook and vision.
Right. So yeah, I mean, what DevOps looks like at Quicken Loans is there's a lot of. So being a financial organization, it's a very complex organization. It's a very complex infrastructure. There's really a lot of security vulnerabilities that we have to kind of take into effect.
For sure.
So really going along with the DevOps idea of having this culture of innovation, and kind of cultivating that uniqueness. It's really something that we're trying to push forward of having DevOps practices, but also keeping in mind what is going on behind the scenes and all the very secure data that we have as well. So really what we're trying to do is lead this transformation of just kind of everything's just kind of in silos, and this happens all across the board, and we're doing a really good job at really just collaborating and kind of paving the way and giving these different avenues for communication, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, right. Hallmarks of any transformation in this arena, right, are legacy and of course culture, right?
Yeah.
And legacy culture, right? But also technology. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome as you try to, again, affect change across such a broad spectrum?
Right. So you mentioned legacy. There's legacy applications, legacy systems. There's also legacy people. And I'm not saying that by talking about old people or anything like that, or the elderly. So don't take that the wrong way. But it's people that are just kind of afraid to change. And I think by just naturally people get a little uncomfortable when there's change. So really just kind of taking that bull by the horns and really starting with the people that aren't very apt to change. And sometimes that's senior leadership. A lot of the times you'll find that in the leadership as well. But it's really showing the success criteria, showing the success stories of what having this DevOps culture, what that can really provide. And it kind of paves the way and allows people to see what DevOps can really give an organization.
Right, yeah, human resistance to change, right?
Right.
If there's not a more immovable force on earth, let us know what that is.
Right.
It was interesting, I was, and you touched on security and compliance in the run up to the show. Some of the organizers, Gene and Nicole, they did a webcast with Alan Schimmel of DevOps.com, our host here, and they were talking about like how did security and compliance get thrown together. I mean, that'd be an interesting touch point, right? How have you seen DevOps affecting that? If there's three legs, it's dev, ops, and security, right?
Yeah.
Which has been such a huge issue for companies in your domain. What are some of the big changes that you've seen there?
So yeah, I mean, security is never going to go away. It's definitely something you always need, and I think that's a very hot word, I guess. People talk about security, especially at DevOps conferences, or especially when you're talking to developers. You talk about security, and it's this word that's just very scary, and people think of resistance when they hear it, like you mentioned. So to get those all to work together, I think DevOps kind of encompasses all that. DevOps is not just developers and operations. DevOps is developers, operations, the infrastructure, system admins. It is security. So getting people on board with that, and I think when you provide the automation and when you actually get less manual interventions and less smart people doing dumb things, less button clicks, security kind of it doesn't really have that same fight of maybe you don't need this firewall open or you need this port open. So kind of get into the nitty gritty, but if it's an automated process, you really kind of take away all the vulnerabilities that maybe potentially fat fingering something could really provide.
Security and automation is that's Pandora's box. We could talk about that all day.
Yeah.
I know one of the items you've been talking about here are metrics.
Yeah.
Right. DevOps metrics. It's been since the drop in the various reports. State of DevOps report talked a lot about it this year. Are there specific metrics that you've seen some strong returns around?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a lot of it is around. So I mean, people talk about is DevOps working? When do you know when you're done? So I don't think there's ever really a finish line. If you're kind of focusing on like the end of the road and you're like, all right, we made it, now we're doing DevOps, I think you're kind of missing the mark. It really is a journey, and you're kind of ever growing and ever evolving into what DevOps is, kind of adapting to the culture as well. So some of the things you can use to measure that. So those metrics, really, what I've noticed is like lead time. So actually creating an application or having an idea, a business request, and then actually putting that, all the way through the development, through tests, through beta, through production. What does that time frame look like? So,
Right.
If current state is 2 months, and then you identify that, we could collaborate here, we could better communicate here, we could automate this manual process here, and then you get that time down to, 2 weeks. I think that's a good metric to measure on. You can, get percentages around that and continue to iterate through that. So something like lead time, I think, is important.
Yeah, if there are any that have stuck out, right, it's that kind of stuff, right, in the meantime to repair and those sort of things.
Yes.
I mean, I guess in closing, one of the, a lot of the conversations we're having here about transformation circle around to customer experience,
Yeah.
right? Because that's why we're doing this at the end of the day. It's creating business value to
Right.
drive customer experience, or vice versa, however
Yeah.
you want to look at that one. What are you seeing in terms of the output of all this work? What are your customers seeing, do you think, in terms of the most significant advantage
Right.
driven by your DevOps work?
So I think, so customer or client to me is the development teams, or the system admins, system engineers.
Sure, yeah.
So those are my direct clients. 'Cause I'm servicing them, providing tools and technologies, and evangelizing different practices and stuff like that. But just seeing the developer autonomy when they're allowed to deploy to their own environments. Once you handcuff a developer and say, you are dependent on a team to push that button for you. When you open that up and say, you know what, it's your code. Who knows it better than you? When you open that up to say they can now deploy that, when you allow for operations to spin up the infrastructure that they want, or even the developers themselves to really have infrastructure as code kind of process in place. Just allowing for that autonomy and allowing for that empowerment can really go a long way, and you see it. I mean, you talk to them, and then they just have more ownership of their code, and they want to understand how the infrastructure works, because you're giving them the power to say, hey, you're spinning up this VM now. This is yours. You own this. So seeing that and seeing the collaboration and like just the excitement about their developing and their programming experience, I think that's enough for me.
Yeah, it's cool, right? I mean, there's a lot of touchy-feely, kind of fuzzy stuff around this. I was at an Agile conference, and I sat next to a guy who, I won't name the organization he worked for, but he was frustrated with people talking about their feelings.
Yeah.
Right? If I go to one more event where people talk about their feelings, I've had too much. But yeah, it's neat to hear how, again, internally your customers are, it's pretty cool to get liberated, right?
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
Absolutely, yeah. Just seeing that empowerment, I think, is just huge. Just having people own things, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, very cool.
Yes.
Again, here, thanks, Tyler. Talking about DevOps Transformation on DevOps TV for DevOps.com at the DOES 2016 conference. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.